everybody. We are going to talk you through and show you all the different types of teas in this beautiful family of teas, and talk specifically about the types, what makes them special about their types, how to brew them, and how to steep them so that you have the perfect cup of tea at home. So I'm going to start with a white tea right now, and white teas are truly the most delicate and lightest parts of the tea plant. Real white teas are picked in the fresh spring harvest, so generally 2 to 3 weeks of the year, around April or May. They're produced generally, or traditionally rather I should say, in China, and more recently in the Darjeeling region of India, in the Nurelia region of Sri Lanka, as well as some really beautiful white teas coming out of the East Rift Valley in Kenya. So white teas are can either just be the young buds themselves, which you can see over here, just the white, delicate, soft bud of the tea plant. That's called the white needle. And the alternative to the white needle is the pai-mu-tan, which is the single bud and 2 leaves. You can see from the wet leaf, and this is how you know you're a real tea nerd, because you'll sit and you'll open up this beautiful, beautiful bud, and it'll open up into a lovely bud that's still closed up inside of the leaf. So really delicate. The liquor in the cup is quite light as well, as you can see. So you buy this tea, you bring it home. How do you make it? You require 1 teaspoon, which actually is 2 grams of tea. Now you'll generally see on brewing instructions teaspoon measurements. I really recommend, however, that you weigh your teas, because a teaspoon of white tea is going to be very, very different than a teaspoon of green tea. So general rule of thumb is 2 grams of tea per 6-ounce cup. You're going to allow your water to come to 80 degrees Celsius, and then you're going to allow your tea to steep for anywhere between 2 to 5 minutes. Now I understand that's a 3-minute range, but that's the beauty of tea, is that you can steep it exactly to the length that you like it. Next, we've got our green teas, and green teas are vastly different from each other depending on whether they have been steamed or whether they've been pan-fired. Traditionally, Japanese green teas go through a steaming process to stop oxidation from happening, and the pan-fired green teas are traditionally from China, and they're literally pan-fired to stop the oxidation process from happening. It does affect the flavors in that the Japanese steamed teas are going to be grassier and more vegetative versus the China greens, which are going to be smokier and toastier and nuttier. So what's the best way to make your green teas? Again, we're going to weigh our tea, because as I said to you, a teaspoon versus a teaspoon, because of the density of the product, is going to be so different from each other. So 2 grams of tea for a 6-ounce cup. We're going to use water temperature of 80 degrees, and we're going to allow our tea to steep anywhere between 1 to 3 minutes. Again, you've got the range depending on whether you like your tea lighter or on the stronger side. Personally, I opt for the 1 minute, and will then decide to do a reinfusion of the same leaves. But it's all up to you. All right, we have reached my all-time favorite teas. Any of you that know me know that I always talk about oolongs as my great love affair with tea. Oolongs are vastly different from each other depending on how long they've been oxidized. So this is a mid-oxidized oolong that we've got here in front of us. You can see some really tight balls that the leaves have been rolled into, that open up into these giant leaves once they've been unfurled. Now, a lightly oxidized oolong is going to be on the spectrum closer to lighter floral, jasmine, lilac kind of flavors, really sweet and lovely and magical. And longer oxidized oolongs are going to be smokier and toastier and nuttier and also a bit darker in the liquor. So as you can imagine, the steeping time is going to vary whether you've got a lighter oxidized or a longer oxidized. So if we're dealing with a lighter oxidized oolong, we're going to use water temperatures that again are on the more delicate side, like the white and the green. So about 80 degrees Celsius is what we'd like to have it at. And we're going to steep for about 2 to 4 minutes on the lightly oxidized oolongs. And on the longer oxidized, I would even go 4 to 5 really. But the decision really is up to you. And again, as I said, on the lighter oxidized ones, I personally like to put it in really quickly and then get a second, third, and sometimes even fourth infusion out of it. So next on our category, we've got black teas. And black teas are really our traditional teas, I suppose, what we in the West call real tea or English tea. These are the teas that we're most familiar with. You can get black teas from all around the world that were from tea producing countries. So from Sri Lanka and from India, from China, from Kenya, from Argentina, Malawi, Rwanda, Tanzania, Turkey. I could go on, but I won't. Flavors are going to vary immensely depending on where the tea is coming from. So you can go from lighter floral, more citrusy notes of a Ceylon to the deep, rich, multi Assam teas from India. So on the black teas, these are fully oxidized teas. So they have completely lost their color. They have gone through the full oxidation process. Steeping of these teas is very simple. Again, measure your tea, 2 grams for a 6-ounce cup. And you're going to use 100-degree boiling water on this. And you're going to allow your tea to steep about 3 to 5 minutes. Black teas are teas that you can add things to. So if you like to put a little bit of milk, a little bit of sugar, lemon, honey, jam, as Eastern Europeans do, you can certainly do that with your black teas. Our next category within the family of tea, so anything that comes from Camellia sinensis, is pu-erh. And pu-erh is a really interesting category because it's unlike all of our other teas in that it is actually fermented. Our white, our green, our oolong, and our black teas are not fermented. Pu-erh, however, goes through a post-fermentation process. So there's a small amount of moisture that's left in these leaves, and it is then piled, wet piled, and aged. And that wet piling and the moisture creates this really good, healthy bacteria on the leaves that leads to or has been connected to all kinds of fantastic health benefits. So the tea itself, as you can see, the wet leaves are quite dark in color, as well as the liquor itself. The flavors of this tea are really rich and earthy, reminds me of beets and mushrooms and really nice earthy pan-fried liver. So steeping time on this is 1 teaspoon, which is 2 grams of tea. We're going to use boiling water on this, and you're going to allow this tea to steep anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes. I don't really recommend adding anything else to this tea, such as milk and sugar, even though it is quite dark and it looks like it could take it. It's really best enjoyed just pure and on its own. So the last one that I'd like to wrap up with is actually not from the tea plant itself, tea plant being Camellia sinensis. We confuse ourselves in English because we call every single thing that we pour hot water on tea, when in reality, tea is a plant, Camellia sinensis, which is where all the other categories that I've already talked about, white, green, oolong, black, and pu-erh, will come from. Everything else that we brew like tea that doesn't actually have a tea leaf in it is referred to as a tisane, an herbal, or an infusion. And here in front of me, I have a classic herbal, chamomile. Chamomile is a flower, and it is very much the same in its dry form as it is in its wet form. Very simple to steep, 1 teaspoon, 2 grams, freshly boiled water, so up to 100 degrees Celsius, and you can allow this to steep anywhere between 3 to 6 minutes, or longer if you like. The longer you allow it to steep, the stronger the flavors are going to get.